Have you ever had something so precious that losing it felt like losing a piece of your soul? Something that connected you to everyone you've ever loved? I had that once. A simple wooden dock stretching into Crystal Lake. 24 weathered planks my grandfather hammered together in 1962. The same dock where my father taught me to fish, where I proposed to my wife, where my kids took their first swimming lessons. But this isn't a story about nostalgia. This is a story about what happens when entitled people push too far, when they mistake kindness for weakness, when they forget that some things are worth flooding the world for. That dock wasn't much to look at. Gray wood, rusty nails, a few loose boards that creaked under your feet. But it was ours. Granddad built it the summer after he bought our little cottage, back when Crystal Lake was just a quiet fishing spot, not the million-dollar playground it became. I remember the smell of creosote and lake water, the sound of waves slapping against the pilings on windy days, the way morning mist would rise off the water, making everything look like a dream. Granddad used to say that dock was our anchor to the lake. Not just physical, he'd tell me, his calloused hands gripping my small shoulders. Spiritual. This family belongs here, kiddo. Don't ever let anyone tell you different. For 63 years, that dock stood. Through storms, floods, ice, and time. It bent, but never broke. Until Karen Whitmore moved in next door. Karen arrived like a hurricane in Louboutin heels. Blonde hair that cost more than my monthly mortgage, a voice that could cut glass, and an attitude that suggested everyone else was simply taking up her oxygen. Her new house? A glass monument to excess. $15 million of steel, stone, and arrogance jutting into the sky like a middle finger to the rest of us cottage owners. The first time I met her, I was on my dock with my grandson, teaching him to tie fishing knots. She appeared at her deck above us, sunglasses reflecting the morning light. "Excuse me," she called down, her voice dripping with false politeness. "That structure is blocking my lake view. I'm going to need you to remove it." I looked up, shading my eyes. "Ma'am, this dock's been here since 1962. It's grandfathered in." "Nothing is grandfathered when it affects property values," she snapped. "I paid $15 million for unobstructed lake views. That eyesore needs to go." My grandson tugged on my sleeve. "Grandpa, what's an eyesore?" "Sometimes, buddy," I said, not breaking eye contact with Karen, "it's not the thing people are looking at. It's the person doing the looking." Her lips pressed into a thin line. "We'll see about that." The letters started the next week. First from Karen personally, handwritten notes on expensive stationery explaining how my decrepit dock was lowering everyone's property values, how it was inconsistent with the aesthetic vision of our community. Then came the HOA notices. See, Karen had done her homework. She'd gotten herself elected as HOA president within 3 months of moving in. Suddenly, our sleepy Lakefront Association was all about property standards and architectural compliance. "Dock must be removed within 30 days, the certified letter read. "Structure violates HOA Covenant 15.7. No permanent structures may extend into lake waters without board approval." I laughed when I read it. Granddad had been on the original HOA board. I had the paperwork proving our dock predated any covenant by decades. But Karen wasn't finished. The fines started at $50, then $100, then $500 per day. My mailbox became a daily reminder that someone with more money and time was trying to erase my family's history. The worst part? Some neighbors started avoiding me. "Property values," they whispered. "Market perception. Maybe I should just compromise." My wife found me staring at the lake one evening, holding another certified letter. "She's not going to stop," I said. "Then neither are we," she replied, her hand finding mine. Granddad didn't raise quitters. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about what Granddad used to say. "Know your ground, kiddo. Know who you are and where you stand." So I went digging, literally. In Granddad's workshop, behind 60 years of accumulated tools and memories, I found his old filing cabinet. Deed records, survey maps, legal documents yellow with age. And there it was, page 47 of the original Crystal Lake Development Agreement, dated 1961. My hands trembled as I read. "Riparian rights to lake access and water flow management shall remain in perpetuity with original landowners of parcels 12 through 18, regardless of subsequent development or association agreements." Water flow management. I pulled out the old survey maps, spreading them across Granddad's workbench. The lake wasn't natural. It was created in 1959 when they dammed Willow Creek. And the dam sat on a corner of our original property that Granddad had sold to the county for $1, with one very specific condition. He retained water rights, including the right to modify flow as necessary for agricultural or recreational purposes. Karen and her millionaire neighbors had built their dream homes on what was essentially a controlled floodplain, and I held the controls. My phone buzzed. A text from Karen. "Dock removal crew arrives Monday morning. Don't interfere or face legal consequences." I looked at Granddad's old documents, then out at my dock, silhouetted against the moonlit water. "Know your ground," I whispered. I spent the weekend like a man preparing for war. Not the kind fought with lawyers and lawsuits, the kind fought with shovels and sweat and the bitter determination of someone who's been pushed too far. Sunday at dawn, I was knee-deep in the muddy creek bed upstream from the dam. 64 years old, but rage and purpose made me feel 25 again. I could smell the rich earth, hear the water gurgling around the old concrete spillway. The dam was simple, built in an era when things were constructed to work, not to impress. A series of concrete panels that could be raised or lowered to control water flow. Granddad's paperwork gave me the legal right to operate it. More importantly, it gave me the knowledge. I spent hours studying the mechanism, remembering what Granddad had taught me about water pressure and gravity, how everything downstream depended on what happened upstream, how power wasn't always about money or lawyers or intimidation. Sometimes power was about understanding which lever to pull. Monday morning, I watched from my kitchen window as Karen's demolition crew arrived. 2 guys with a small crane, probably costing her $5,000 for a job that should have taken 20 minutes. I sipped my coffee and waited. The first blow of the sledgehammer against Granddad's dock sent vibrations through my chest. Each impact felt personal, deliberate. Karen stood on her deck with a satisfied smile, recording everything on her phone like she was documenting some great victory. The second blow took out a support beam, my grandson's fishing spot. The third destroyed the ladder where 3 generations had climbed out of the lake on summer afternoons. I set down my coffee cup and walked outside. Not to stop them, that battle was already lost, but to witness, to remember exactly how it felt to watch someone destroy something precious just because they could. "Nothing personal," one of the workers called out as I approached, "just following orders." "I know," I replied. "Me too." That evening, Karen threw a party. Of course she did. The destruction of my dock wasn't just about her view, it was about proving a point, showing the neighborhood who was in charge now, who had the real power. I could see the lights from my kitchen window, hear the laughter and clinking glasses, smell the expensive catering drifting across the water. Her guests were probably admiring her improved lake views, toasting their victory over the stubborn old-timer next door. At 11 p.m., when the party was in full swing, I made my move. The walk to the dam felt longer in the darkness. My flashlight beam danced across familiar paths I'd walked with Granddad as a boy. Every step was a memory. Every breath tasted like justice. The spillway controls were exactly where I remembered them. Heavy wheels that required real muscle to turn. Granddad's voice echoed in my head. Righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. But with water, son, sometimes you need to let things flow. I started with the first wheel. It fought me at first, decades of rust and sediment making it stubborn. But I was more stubborn. The metal groaned as it gave way, and I felt the first rush of satisfaction as water pressure shifted behind the concrete panels. The second wheel was easier. Muscle memory from childhood summers when Granddad let me help with maintenance. Water began flowing faster now, spilling over the lower sections of the dam with a sound like whispered revenge. By the third wheel, I could hear the change downstream, the gentle lapping at shorelines becoming something hungrier, more insistent. The fourth wheel opened the floodgates completely. Water roared past the dam now, 64 years of pent-up lake rushing toward the fancy houses below. I stood there for a moment, feeling the spray on my face, listening to the sound of gravity and justice working together. Then I walked home to wait. The first scream came at 11:47 p.m. Then another. Car doors slamming, engines starting, the sound of panic discovering that nature doesn't care about your net worth. By midnight, Crystal Lake had dropped 4 feet. By 1 a.m., Karen's perfect boat dock was sitting on muddy lake bottom. By 2 a.m., her friends' waterfront patios were just front patios, looking out over a shrinking pond and the exposed concrete foundations of their $15 million monuments to excess. I made myself a cup of tea and sat on what was left of my destroyed dock, watching Karen's house lights blaze as she screamed into her phone. Probably calling lawyers, maybe the police, definitely demanding someone fix this immediately. But you can't sue gravity, and you can't intimidate a man who's got nothing left to lose. The next morning was chaos. Local news trucks lined our quiet road. Environmental officials scratched their heads at the unprecedented drainage event. HOA board members, the ones who weren't dealing with their own flooded basements, demanded emergency meetings. Karen appeared at my door around noon, her perfect composure finally cracked. Her makeup was smeared, her voice hoarse from a night of screaming at people who couldn't help her. "You did this," she hissed. "I know you did this." "Did what?" I asked innocently. "Exercised my legal water rights? There's nothing illegal about dam maintenance." You can't just drain a lake because you're having a tantrum." "Actually," I said, pulling out Granddad's paperwork, "I can. Riparian rights. Look it up. Your lawyers missed this one when they were busy trying to steal my dock." Behind her, I could see other neighbors emerging from their houses. Not the millionaire transplants, they were busy dealing with contractors and insurance adjusters. The old-timers, the families who'd been here for decades. They were. "Smiling! This is destruction of property!" Karen shrieked. "Terrorism! I'm calling the FBI!" "Good luck with that," called out Mrs. Henderson from 3 houses down. She'd lived here since 1963. "Maybe next time you'll think twice before messing with things that don't belong to you." Other voices joined in, a chorus of neighbors who'd been bullied, fined, and intimidated by Karen's HOA reign of terror. People who'd watched her destroy what made our community special in the name of property values. "Yeah, Karen, how's that view now? Maybe your next house will have a pool instead of a lake. Don't let the door hit you on the way out." Karen looked around at faces that had transformed from fear to fierce satisfaction. She was seeing what happens when you push people past their breaking point, when you mistake silence for submission. "I'll sue you all," she whispered, but the fight was gone out of her voice. You'll what?" I asked quietly. "Tear down another dock? Fine another family for having a garden that's too colorful? Force someone else to choose between their memories and your money?" She had no answer, just turned and stalked back to her glass house, where contractors were already installing pumps and fans to deal with the water damage from her flooded lower level. 3 weeks later, Karen put her house on the market. Turns out, $15 million of lakefront property isn't worth much when there's no lake. The other McMansion owners followed suit within a month. Suddenly, Crystal Lake was quiet again. The old-timers got together and voted Karen out as HOA president, elected Mrs. Henderson instead. First order of business? Rescinding all the architectural compliance nonsense and returning to the original covenants that actually made sense. "I could have reopened the dam controls immediately. Let the lake refill, restore everyone's property values, play nice. But I waited. Let Karen and her crowd stew in the consequences of their actions for just long enough to understand what they'd lost." When I finally did restore normal water flow, my new dock was already half built. The neighbors helped, even bought the lumber. Granddad would have loved that. But here's the question that keeps me awake some nights. Was what I did justice, or was it just an old man's revenge dressed up in legal technicalities? Karen destroyed something irreplaceable out of pure entitlement. I destroyed her investment out of pure spite. She used lawyers and bureaucracy as weapons. I used water and gravity. She hurt my family's legacy. I hurt her bank account. The lake is full again now. The expensive houses are gone, replaced by families who understand that some things matter more than money. My grandson is learning to fish from the new dock, and the cycle continues. Was I right? Was she? Or are we all just flawed people trying to protect what we love in an imperfect world? I'd love to hear what you think. Have you ever been pushed too far by someone who thought their money made them invincible? Have you ever had to choose between doing what's legal and doing what's right? Drop your stories in the comments below. And if you've got a Karen in your neighborhood, maybe this will give you some ideas about how power really works. Sometimes the person with the most money isn't the person with the most power. Sometimes power is just knowing which dam to open and when.